I always thought the ranch looked different at dawn, like the world hadn't quite decided what it wanted to be yet. The mist clung to the low hills, softening the fences and the edges of the barns, and for a while it was easy to pretend nothing ever changed. But that morning I could feel it. Something had shifted, and it wasn't just the weather. The horses were restless, and so was I. I'd been working at Miller Creek Ranch for almost 5 years, long enough to know every creak in the stable, every stubborn latch on the feed room door, long enough to stop pretending that I was only here for the paycheck. It was the quiet I loved, the kind that let me think without interruption, the kind that made loneliness feel like a friend instead of a wound. Then there was him. Eli Mercer had rolled into town 3 summers ago, hat tilted low, a smile that came slow but stuck around. He was the kind of cowboy people noticed, though he never seemed to notice them back. Except me. Or at least, sometimes it felt that way. We worked side by side most mornings, riding fence lines or checking cattle, talking about nothing in particular, weather, busted gates, bad coffee, simple things that somehow carried too much meaning. He had this easy laugh that I could feel in my chest long after it faded, and hands that moved like he'd been born with a rope in one and a horse's reins in the other. He never talked much about where he came from, and I never asked. Maybe that's why we got along. We both liked the silence between words. But lately, that silence felt heavier, more complicated. When Mr. Miller mentioned needing a pair of us to take the northern trail and check the line fences before winter came, Eli volunteered first. Then he looked at me, just a quick glance enough to make my throat go dry, and said, "I'll take him with me." So here I was, saddlebags packed, boots dusted, pretending my heart wasn't beating too fast for a simple 2-day trip through the hills. As I cinched my horse's girth that morning, I caught sight of Eli across the yard, sunlight catching on the curve of his jaw. He grinned when he saw me, that slow, knowing grin that never failed to knock the air out of me. "Hope you're ready, partner," he called. And damn it, I was. I just wasn't ready for whatever this thing between us was becoming. Eli and I had been working side by side long enough to fall into an easy rhythm, the kind that doesn't need talking to keep moving. Still, he talked anyway, usually about things that didn't matter. The taste of Mrs. Miller's overcooked biscuits, the way the new ranch hand couldn't saddle a horse right, or how the sky here never looked the same twice. I'd grumble back, pretending not to care, but inside, I hung on to every word like it meant something. We'd met the way most ranch hands do, by accident and bad timing. He'd shown up during branding week, sweat already glistening on his neck, sleeves rolled high as if the sun had made a personal challenge out of him. I'd been halfway through roping a calf when he shouted across the pen, "You sure that's how you do it here?" I'd shot him a glare sharp enough to cut barbed wire. "You want to show me how, cowboy?" He did, and he was damn good at it. I remember thinking, great, another cocky drifter who'll be gone by fall. But Eli stayed, and little by little, that smart mouth of his turned into something I looked forward to. Now, riding beside him along the narrow trail, I realized just how much I'd missed hearing him talk about nothing. The hills rolled out ahead, golden and green under the late afternoon sun. He whistled a low tune, something bluesy and slow, and I found myself matching my horse's pace to his without even thinking about it. "You ever notice," he said after a while, "how the air smells cleaner after it rains?" "It hasn't rained in weeks," I replied. "Still," he said with a smirk, "guess I'm just hopeful." "Hopeful?" I laughed. "For rain or for something else?" He turned his head, eyes catching mine for a heartbeat too long. "Guess you'll have to find out." That look lingered in my mind the rest of the day. By sunset, we'd made camp near a creek that cut through the valley. Eli built the fire while I handled the horses. When I came back, he was sitting cross-legged, poking at the flames with a stick. The light flickered over his face. and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. He looked content. Like this. Just the quiet, the fire, and the two of us was enough. We ate jerky and beans in comfortable silence until he noticed me unpacking my gear. "You didn't bring a bedroll?" "I did," I said, frowning as I checked the saddlebag again. "Or I thought I did." Eli tilted his head. "You mean the one still hangin' on the rail back at the barn?" I groaned. "Damn it." He chuckled low, a sound that felt like a spark under my skin. "Well, guess you'll have to share mine." I froze. He said it casually, like it was no big deal, but the image that flashed through my mind definitely was. "Relax," he added, still smiling. "Ain't like I bite." "I'll take my chances by the fire," I muttered, though my voice betrayed me with a nervous edge. The night grew colder than expected. By midnight, I'd stopped pretending I was fine. My hands were numb, and I could see my breath fogging the air. Eli stirred from his bedroll, eyes half open. "You're freezing," he murmured, voice rough from sleep. "Get in here, before you turn blue." I hesitated only a moment too long. He lifted the blanket anyway, and I slipped in beside him. The warmth hit me instantly, along with the quiet thump of his heartbeat through his shirt. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt too fragile to break. His shoulder brushed mine, and though it could have been accidental, he didn't move away. Neither did I. The smell of leather, pine, and faint smoke clung to him, and I caught myself breathing it in like I needed it. Somewhere between the crackle of the fire and the steady rhythm of his breathing, I realized I wasn't just drawn to Eli's laugh or the way he worked. I was drawn to him, and that truth settled deep in my chest, heavy, terrifying, and impossibly right. I woke to thunder, not the gentle kind that rumbles far off in the hills, but the kind that splits the world in half. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Just the sound of rain hammering the earth and Eli's arm draped heavy across my chest. The fire had died sometime in the night, leaving only the faint orange glow of wet embers. I could smell rain and leather and something else. Eli, warm and steady beside me. His breath brushed against the back of my neck, slow and even. For a heartbeat, I let myself stay still. Let myself imagine this was something ordinary, that I could wake like this every morning without the fear chewing at the edges of my thoughts. But reality always found a way back in. The rain came harder, seeping through the canvas of our little shelter. I shifted, and Eli stirred with a low groan. "What the hell?" he mumbled, blinking against the dim light. Then, noticing how close we were, he grinned, that lazy morning smile of his. "Well, mornin' to you too." I tried to roll away, but the ground was slick, and the tarp above us sagged under the weight of the water. "Looks like the storm hit early," I muttered, ignoring the way my pulse jumped when he didn't move his arm right away. "Guess we're stuck here a while," he said, voice still thick from sleep. He finally sat up, pushing wet hair from his forehead. The movement left his shirt, clinging to his chest, rain-soaked and transparent in places. I looked away too quickly. Great. Trapped in a muddy field with you. Exactly how I wanted to spend my day. He chuckled. "You wound me, partner." We scrambled to tighten the edges of the tarp, but the rain kept finding its way in. The creek we'd camped beside was swelling fast, churning brown and angry. The horses stamped nervously nearby. By mid-morning, it was clear. We weren't going anywhere. Eli crouched beside the fire pit, trying to coax life back into damp kindling. "You'd think after years out here, I'd have learned to keep the damn wood dry," he muttered. "Guess even cowboys have bad days." He shot me a look, half amusement, half challenge. "You calling me a bad cowboy?" "I didn't say bad," I said, meeting his eyes. "Just human." That made him smile again, but softer this time. "Human, huh? I'll take it." We huddled under the tarp as the rain fell harder, our knees bumping when we shifted. The storm had turned the air cold enough to see our breath, and though neither of us said it, We both knew warmth was going to be a problem again. Eli noticed me shivering and held out his blanket. "You're no good to me frozen. Get closer." "I'm fine." He frowned. "You're not. Quit being stubborn." I hesitated, then moved closer until our shoulders touched. The blanket wasn't big enough for comfort. It forced us into an awkward half-embrace, legs tangled, breaths mingling. I could feel every shift of his muscles, every exhale brushing my skin. He tried to joke it off. "Can't say this is the worst day I've had on the trail." "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh. "You've had worse company." He paused, eyes catching mine. "Can't say that either." The space between us went quiet after that. Too quiet. Outside, the storm roared, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. I told myself not to read into it. He was just being friendly, just trying to help. But then his hand brushed against mine beneath the blanket, once, twice, like it wasn't sure it had permission to stay. When it did, I didn't move it away. The touch was small, almost nothing, but it set off something deep inside me. I wanted to lean in, to close that impossible inch between us. But fear held me still, the kind that comes from knowing once you cross a line, you can't go back. Eli shifted, voice low. "You're quiet." "Just thinking." "About what?" "Nothing important." He gave a soft laugh. "You're a terrible liar." He was right, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, I was afraid everything I'd kept buried would come spilling out. Hours passed like that. Storm raging, the two of us caught in the middle of nowhere, pretending not to notice how close we were. By evening, the rain eased, leaving behind a sky streaked with violet clouds and air that smelled fresh and new. Eli leaned back, arms folded behind his head, looking at the clearing sky. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked suddenly. I frowned. "What? The ranch?" "Yeah. Just seeing what's out there. Starting over." "Can't say I've thought about it much." He looked over at me, eyes serious now. "I think about it all the time." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. There was weight there, loneliness maybe, or longing for something more than the life we knew. I wanted to ask what he meant, but before I could, lightning cracked in the distance again, closer this time. He turned to me, face lit by the flicker of our small fire. "Guess we're not done with the storm yet." His voice was soft, but his gaze lingered long enough to say what he didn't. That look, unspoken, heavy, impossible to ignore, stayed with me long after the thunder rolled away. And lying beside him again that night, listening to the rain drum above us, I knew the storm outside wasn't the only one I was trying to survive. The storm lasted through the night, dragging dawn behind it like an afterthought. When the sun finally broke through, the hills were wrapped in fog, and everything, the grass, the horses, the air itself, smelled washed clean. Everything except the tightness in my chest. Eli was already up, coaxing life back into the fire. His shirt clung damp against his shoulders, hair falling into his eyes. He looked exhausted and beautiful in the same breath, and that realization hit me like a kick in the ribs. "Coffee?" he asked, handing me a tin mug. "Thanks." I took it, trying not to notice the brush of his fingers. The warmth seeped through my palms, but it did nothing for the chill inside me. We drank in silence, the kind that wasn't easy anymore. Finally, he spoke. "I kept thinking last night that the storm might take the tarp clean off. Would have been a hell of a sight. Us drenched, cursin' at the sky." "Would have made a good story," I said. "Maybe," he murmured, looking at me over the rim of his cup. "If we made it back to tell it." Something about the way he said we caught me off guard, like it meant more than two cowboys surviving a bad night in the hills. The wind moved through the wet grass, carrying the smell of sage and smoke. I stared into my cup, pretending to study the dark swirl at the bottom, when what I really wanted was to look at him. to figure out if I was imagining everything between us. He set his mug down and started packing up camp. "Trail'll be hell after the rain," he said. "We'll have to take the long way back." I nodded, helping where I could, careful not to brush against him. Every small touch felt charged now, as if the air itself noticed. By noon, we were riding slow along a muddy ridge. The clouds had lifted, but my thoughts hadn't. I wanted to say something. Anything, but the words stuck like thorns in my throat. Eli glanced over. "You've been quiet since yesterday." "Just tired." "Bull." His voice was gentle, not accusing. "You get quiet when you're thinking too hard." I swallowed. "And what makes you think you know that?" He smiled faintly. "'Cause I pay attention." That shouldn't have hit as hard as it did. The horse beneath me shifted, catching my unease. When we reached the ridge's end, the path narrowed until we had to dismount and lead the horses down by hand. The silence between us grew thicker than the fog. I could feel it pressing at my ribs, begging for release. Halfway down, Eli stopped and turned to me. "You gonna tell me what's really going on? Or are you fixin' to keep bottling it up till it eats you alive?" I froze, one hand on the reins, the other clenched tight. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yeah, you do." His tone softened. "You've been wound up since we left the ranch. Thought maybe it was just the weather, but..." He hesitated, eyes searching mine. "It's something else, ain't it?" I should have lied again, should have laughed it off. But I was tired. Tired of pretending, tired of being careful. The storm had stripped everything bare outside. Maybe it had done the same to me. "I don't want to mess this up," I said finally, the words breaking out before I could stop them. "Mess what up?" "This." I gestured between us, then dropped my hand, embarrassed. "Whatever this is. You and me. The work. The hell. I don't even know what to call it." He took a slow step closer, mud squelching under his boots. "Then call it what you feel." I looked away, staring at the valley below. The air was cool and damp, and my heart wouldn't slow down. "You don't get it, Eli." My voice cracked. "You make this damn job bearable. You make everything bearable. And I can't." He waited silent, patient. I can't keep pretending it doesn't mean more than it should. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd gone too far. The world went still, no wind, no birds, just the sound of rain dripping from the trees. Then Eli exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping him. "You think you're the only one losing sleep over this?" I blinked. "What?" He rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly shy in a way I'd never seen. "I've been trying to keep my distance. Figured if I joked enough, maybe I'd fool myself into thinking it was just friendship." He met my gaze then, steady and open. Didn't work. Something in my chest cracked, wide open. "You mean?" I mean I've been trying real hard not to want what I want," he said quietly. "And I'm failing to..." The admission hung between us, fragile as glass. I wanted to move closer, but my boots felt rooted in the mud. "What if this ruins everything?" I asked. "The work. The ranch. Us." Eli stepped forward until he was close enough for me to see the rain caught in his lashes. "Then we figure it out. Together." The simple certainty in his voice broke through the fear I'd been holding on to. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in me for years. "I don't know what comes next," I said. "Neither do I," he admitted. "But I know what I want right now." He lifted a hand, hesitated, then brushed his fingers against mine. The touch was small, barely there, but it felt like the world shifted on its axis. I didn't pull away this time. His thumb traced slow circles against my skin, and I saw the question in his eyes, the same one that had been burning in mine for weeks. I gave the smallest nod I could manage, and that was enough. Eli stepped closer until the space between us disappeared. The world blurred at the edges. The horses, the valley, the leftover rain hanging in the air. All that remained was the warmth of his hand and the quiet certainty that, somehow, this was exactly where I was meant to be. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I've wanted this for a long time." "Me too," I said, and the truth of it came out raw, unguarded, real. We stood there in the middle of the ridge, the fog curling around us like a secret kept safe by the mountains. Nothing about it was perfect, the mud, the chill, the ache of everything we'd just admitted, but it was ours. For the first time, the silence between us didn't feel heavy. It felt like possibility. For a while, neither of us said a word. The valley below shimmered with the last bits of fog, the air sharp with the scent of wet sage. The world felt suspended, as if it were holding its breath with us. Eli's hand stayed in mine, not gripping, just resting there, steady and real. After everything unsaid, that small contact felt louder than any words we could have spoken. Finally, he huffed out a laugh, soft, almost disbelieving. "Well," he said, "that sure complicates things." I couldn't help smiling. "Guess it does." "Hell," he murmured, shaking his head. "You got any idea how long I've been trying not to say that out loud?" "Long enough for me to notice," I said. That earned me one of his grins, slow, crooked, the kind that started in his eyes before it reached his mouth. "You noticed, huh?" "Hard not to," I replied. "You're not exactly subtle." He laughed, low and genuine, and something about it loosened the knot that had been sitting in my chest for months. We finished the descent side by side, shoulders brushing now and then, and every touch felt easier, still new, but no longer something we had to hide from. When the trail widened again, he nudged me playfully. "So, what happens now, partner? You plan on quittin' the ranch, riding off into the sunset without me?" I rolled my eyes. "Please, you'd never last a week without someone around to fix your messes." "Oh, so you're staying out of pity then?" "Purely," I said, but the smile gave me away. By the time we made camp that evening, the world had settled into a calm hush. The storm had rinsed the sky clean. Stars blinked sharp and cold overhead. We sat close to the fire, passing a can of beans back and forth, talking about everything and nothing. Our first real conversation without that careful edge between us. He told me about the places he'd worked before Miller Creek, the kind of drifting life that sounded lonelier than he admitted. "Never really found a spot that felt like it could be home," he said, poking the fire with a stick. "Till now, maybe." I glanced at him. "You mean the ranch?" He looked up, eyes catching the firelight. "I meant you." The words hit deeper than I expected. I didn't trust myself to answer, so I just leaned back, close enough that our shoulders touched. He didn't move away. For a long time, we watched the sparks rise and fade into the dark. I thought about all the mornings we'd spent pretending, the jokes, the silences, the looks that had lasted a little too long. All that weight was gone now, replaced by something quiet and certain. Eli broke the silence first. "You know, the ranch ain't exactly the kind of place folks are open-minded." "I know," I said softly. "You okay with that?" I took a moment before answering. "I've spent most of my life hiding parts of myself. I'm tired of it. Maybe we don't have to shout it to the world, but I'm done pretending I don't feel what I feel." He nodded slowly, relief flickering across his face. "Good, 'cause I was fixin' to say the same thing." The fire crackled between us, throwing orange light across the lines of his face. He reached out then, tentative at first, his fingers brushing mine. I turned my hand over and let him take it. "Guess we'll figure it out," I said. "Yeah," he whispered. "We will." We sat like that until the fire burned low, the sky above wide and endless. When he finally leaned against me, head resting lightly on my shoulder, it felt natural, like we'd been finding our way toward this moment all along. And for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. I was thinking about the warmth beside me, the quiet rhythm of our breathing, and the simple, terrifying, beautiful fact that neither of us had to be alone anymore. We rode back 2 days later, slower than we needed to. Neither of us said it out loud, but I think we both wanted to stretch those hours out, to stay in that soft space where the world hadn't caught up to us yet. The ranch would. Life always did. But for now, it was just the rhythm of hoofbeats, the smell of sun-warmed earth, and Eli's quiet humming beside me. The hills rolled past, washed green again after the rain. Every so often he'd glance my way, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth, and it had hit me all over again that he knew, that we'd both finally stopped pretending. At the ridge above Miller Creek, we stopped to water the horses. From up there, you could see the barns glinting like coins in the distance, the windmill creaking slow. It looked the same as ever, but I didn't feel the same walking back toward it. "You think anyone noticed we were gone longer than planned?" I asked. Eli shrugged. "Probably. Miller'll just be glad the fences are still standin'. He turned his horse toward me, resting his forearms on the saddle horn. "You sure about this? About going back?" "Yeah," I said. "It's home." He tilted his head. "Home, huh?" I smiled faintly. Guess I found a reason to stay. Something softened in his eyes. He didn't say anything right away, just looked at me like he was memorizing the moment, the words, the air between us. Then he reached across the space between our horses and squeezed my gloved hand. A quick touch, but enough. "Then I'll stay too," he said simply. We didn't talk much the rest of the way. Didn't need to. But as we rode into the yard, I noticed the smallest things, the way he matched his pace to mine, how his laughter came easier, how even the silence felt different now, fuller somehow. That evening, after the horses were fed and the sky turned gold, we sat on the fence watching the sun sink behind the pastures. The air buzzed with crickets, the smell of hay drifting through. Eli handed me a flask, the one he'd carried since I'd known him, and I took a swig before passing it back. "To new beginnings," he said. "To finally saying what we mean," I replied. He chuckled. "That too." We fell quiet again, watching the last bit of light fade. The moment didn't need grand words. It was enough to sit there side by side, knees brushing, the future stretching out before us like the open range. After a while, he nudged me with his shoulder. "So," he said, voice low and teasing, "about that first night. You still plannin' on freezin' by the fire every time we camp, or you finally learned your lesson?" I tried to glare, but the smile betrayed me. "I'm pretty sure you were the one who invited yourself into my space, if I remember right." "That's so." He smirked. "Funny. I recall Savon your stubborn hide. Guess we'll call it even then." He laughed, a deep, warm sound that filled the fading light between us. Then he leaned forward slightly, not enough for anyone from the house to notice, but enough that I could feel his breath when he said, "Reckon we'll have to test that theory next time." "Next time?" I echoed. He grinned. "There's always a next time." And I believed him. The sky dimmed to violet, and the first stars came out. I let my shoulder rest against his, just enough that it felt deliberate. He didn't move away. He never would, I realized. Whatever waited ahead, the whispers, the risk, the long days that blurred into one another, we'd face it the way we'd faced everything else, side by side. Eli nudged the brim of his hat lower and said softly, "You know, for all your grumbling, you ain't half bad company." I smiled into the dark. "Don't get used to it." "Too late," he said, and there was laughter in his voice. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain far off in the distance. Maybe another storm was coming, maybe not. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of what the next day might bring, because wherever it led, I knew who'd be riding beside me.